Hey gang, so today's another sponsored video by GEEONE, and this time they have sent through the Limbo mechanical slider by Lino EDC. I don't know. It's in stainless steel, it's mechanical. It's like a zipper slider, and it's actually pretty cool, although I have a few thoughts on it, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get onto the camera, open it up, take out everything, and see what makes it click. See what I did there? All right, it's the Limbo slider. Let's go. Okay, here we go with the Limbo slider. Now this is a mechanical slider and it is good, but it's not great. And the reason I don't find the action on it great is that it is not a fluid slide. It gets caught. And anybody who has this, I would really be curious to know if they sort of deal with the same thing. When you get it moving, it's totally fine, right? When you get it moving, it slides well. However, see that? This is from me just trying to push it to start. Unless I am really forcing it to slide back and forth, it does this. So you get this kind of jerky motion, and I guess it's just the way it's tuned, but frankly, I'm not really sure you can tune it any other way. And I'm going to explain why in a minute. We're going to take this apart. And when I first took this apart, I couldn't understand why there were so many things you could remove until I tried to put it back together. So it's a really important distinction, and I think I know why it kind of moves the way it does, but I don't know if there's a fix. So let's talk about the ergonomics. Ergonomics are great, actually. This in your hand feels awesome. It's got this nice little indent on both sides, and one side is deeper than the other. And, you know, just taking it and moving it is really, really good. This side has the deeper indent. It's got this little thumb groove in it. And so once you get a hold of it, you can really start moving it. The issue though is, like I said, is this. It sticks. It's a sticky slider. So unless you're really, and that's not to say you can't get it to go smooth, but there isn't that glide you get from really good mechanical sliders. But again, I don't think it's its fault in the sense that there is an internal component in here that I think is causing that. So we're going to look at it. It also has to do with this little see-through plate, which is not just a design feature, as I found out when trying to put it back together. So let's get right to it. Now this is stainless steel, really cool little design on it. I always love the artwork that comes on these things. So really neat. A bit heavy, but a nice weight, like a solid, it feels good, feels safe, you know, like there's something comforting about it. Let's just get right to taking it apart. Now there are screws in tracks, here and here. There are also screws on the top. So when I first looked at this, there were a bunch of options on how to take this apart, and you can actually take it apart in multiple ways, but any of these ways deal with, you have to slide it to one side, take out a screw, slide it to the other side and take out a screw. Now, if you want this to come apart as sort of like a nice controlled way, then you want to take it apart from here first, because there is something hidden inside here. So let's get to it. Let's take out this plate. So slide to the other side, take out this other screw. Now, I can just pull and the top comes off. Now, the reason we do this way is because then you're not worried about holding the balls in. You know, like on a lot of these mechanical sliders, when you slide the plate off, it gets to a point where the ball is revealed once you're allowed to slide it further than it's normally meant to go, and you have to hold down the balls, or else if you've made the mistake like I have, and a lot of times you go to slide, all of a sudden the balls are revealed, and they start flying everywhere and you lose them. So when you do it this way, you lift off, and as you can see, the balls are facing down, and then you're looking at the springs. So inside here, we have, let me see here, let's get our little tweezers. So again, there are two ways to take this apart, and maybe we'll go through both ways. So here we have the spring. I'm going to put that in here. We have our little cap, little brass cap, and the ball. I'll do the same on the other side. So again, all this does is this just kind of controls, get in there, prevents it from sort of flying out once it's exposed. So it's a little more of a controlled way to remove it. Okay, so we've got our little pieces in here. I'm going to move that to the side. And now we have this sliding bar. Now, as you'll see, once this bar slides off, here is the extra feature that you don't typically see on other sliders. So again, if we just kind of move this back to where it was. So if I'm pushing down on this, you can see that I can push to a certain point. And then what happens is this little track hits these stoppers, and what causes it to hit these stoppers are these very odd little strips. These strips have balls inside them, and now what I did learn is that these balls can actually fall out, and they are tiny, so you have to be super careful with them. So if I put these here, we have our track. And what happens is, let me take off the track. I'm also going to take off the stopper, just one though. So let's take this track off. Apologies for my hand being in the way. Okay, so if we can see on the inside of this track is a groove. And so what happens is this little ball strip, I'll call it, I don't know what else to call it, sits inside this groove. And so as it slides, right, as it slides along, it stops when it hits this cap, because the cap doesn't have a groove. So the ball slides with the top lid, they move along, and then boom, it stops right here. So that's what kind of prevents it from sliding off. The issue with this, however, is I think this is what's generating that extra friction that prevents you from sliding this smoothly. I think there's just so much pressure on here that you don't get that nice flow with it. But as you can see, all the pieces come off. And then, I mean, this end cap could come off as well. And I have a friend who says that he's not comfortable taking things apart. And I totally get that. And I know this is probably scary to look at. However, once you get comfortable taking things apart, it's actually really easy. They're very simple pieces. Okay, so let's put this back together. Now, it took me a little bit to figure out the best way to get it put back together. And there's a lot of like sliding and moving things around in order to do that. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that our center post is where it needs to be. So I'm going to screw that back in. Okay, so our center post is on. Now, this goes in here, right, typically. And like I said, at first, I couldn't understand why this post came out. But then I realized why. It is impossible to put these things back into that track without this being disassembled the way I'm going to do it. If you tried to just put the balls on, like these little ball inserts into here, and then tried to close this, there's no way that these wouldn't just keep falling over. They'd be sitting here, and then the minute you let them go, they kind of they tip. And that's because you can't control them while trying to put this whole piece on, especially because you can't slide it from the side because we have these stoppers sort of built into the track. So what you have to do is get the pieces in like this, okay? So you want those on here, and then we take this center cap piece right here, and we just slide it over. Okay, first step. We put that on. Now, this screws into the lid. You do not put the screws down, you take the screws from here to here. So how do we do that? Well, first we put the cap on, flip it over, and then slide it and reveal the hole. So now we have the hole on this side. And then slide it to the other side. Now you'll notice I haven't put the balls and springs in yet while it was upside down. And that's because taking it apart works the way I showed you, but then I still prefer putting it back in the more traditional way, as it were. Because everything has to be lined up perfectly when you put it in. So at this point, I want to, I really want to be able to control how I am putting the springs in, and then the little caps and the balls. And if I was trying to do this upside down, I would be doing like the ball, the cap, and the spring, and then trying to fit it all together. And that's just, to me, that's just not a very controlled way of doing things. Now, here is the tricky part always, which is putting these little things into your tweezers and not having them go flying. And so I'm sure a lot of you would have had that scenario where you pick something up with the tweezer and then it pinches too hard and the little object, whatever it is, goes flying out. So I find I really have to focus on how I am grabbing these, the balls especially. And I find the best way, look at you, get it in there. I find the best way to deal with these balls, oh, that's why my cap's not in properly. I find the best way to deal with these balls is to have a flat tweezer, so a wide flat tweezer, so there's as much surface as possible hitting the ball, instead of the little skinny ones that just kind of pinch it. So if you have flat tweezers, those are just way easier than dealing with, you know, something really tiny. I find the little tiny ones, that really just turns the ball into a projectile. Okay, so now we have the balls in here. Now this makes it easier. And it's actually, I love that the ears kind of come up right to the balls. So now you can just push down on the balls and then slide over. And then we're back. Now the last thing we have to do, see how we have the stopper on this side. So we just have to put our stopper on the other side. Now I actually left the screw in. So I'll just pick that up. And that's it, it's back together. So it's really pretty simple to take it apart. It's just something you have to pay attention to while you're doing it, because there is the potential for it to go wrong very easily. But yeah, just, I don't know. If I'm pressing hard on it, no problem. If I press down, like if you squeeze it, it's great. But if you want a lighter slide, you can see how it just kind of gets caught in its movement. So I'm on the fence with this one. Again, if you're going to use it, this really needs to be like a push down, like a squeeze and slide. And then it's fine. But again, you have to give it that force. I guess it's to engage the balls on the sides as well, to sort of like get them out of the way so that they're not slowing things down. I mean, I don't know. Listen. This is just me making it up as I go, right? But there is something there. But yeah, if you press down, squeeze, you're totally fine. It's just knowing you have to do that. Okay, gang, so that's it. That's the limbo slider. It's a fun little slider. You just have to know how to use it properly. And again, this is a squeeze. All right, thanks for watching.